The corridors of Terminus 7 hummed with the low, steady pulse of life support systems. Maya Chen walked her usual route through the lower maintenance section, her boots making soft echoes against the metal floor. The night shift was always quiet. Most of the station's inhabitants were sleeping or working in their private quarters. She liked it this way. The silence gave her time to think. Her flashlight beam cut through the dimness as she checked each junction point. Everything looked normal. The same pipes, the same wall panels, the same boring routine she had followed for 3 months now. Maya was still new to station security, but she knew her job well enough. Check the corridors, monitor the systems, report anything unusual. Simple. She turned the corner near Section 7 Delta and stopped. Something was different. A soft sound reached her ears, chirping, high-pitched and desperate. Maya moved toward the noise, her hand instinctively moving to the stun weapon at her belt. The sound came from near a large ventilation grate. The metal cover hung loose on one side. Maya knelt down and pointed her light inside. 6 small eyes reflected back at her, glowing in the beam. She pulled back slightly, then looked again more carefully. 3 small creatures huddled together in the narrow space behind the grate. They were covered in soft silver-gray fur that seemed to shimmer in the light. Each one was about the size of Maya's hand. They had round faces with large eyes and tiny paws that clutched at each other. The creatures shivered violently, pressing together for warmth. Maya recognized them immediately. Velkari cubs. She had seen adult Velkari around the station before. They were a tall, elegant species with strict rules about everything. Their society valued order and control above all else. And she knew one other thing about them. They abandoned cubs that were born outside of approved population quotas. The cubs made soft chirping sounds, looking up at her with those huge, frightened eyes. One of them reached a tiny paw toward her. Maya felt something twist in her chest. She had grown up with dogs and cats. She had rescued a bird with a broken wing when she was 10. Every instinct in her body screamed at her to help these small, helpless creatures. But she knew the rules. Station protocol was clear. Any abandoned or stray animals had to be reported to the authorities. They would contact the Velkari government. The cubs would be processed through their legal system. Maya had heard what that meant. The cubs would be eliminated. They were considered excess population, mistakes, problems to be solved. She stared at the 3 small faces looking back at her. They had stopped shivering quite so much, as if sensing she might help. One of them made a soft sound, almost like a question. Maya made a decision. It took less than 3 seconds. She would probably regret it. She would definitely get in trouble if anyone found out. But she could not leave these cubs here to die. She pulled off her security hoodie. Underneath, she wore a standard uniform shirt. The hoodie was oversized, something she had brought from Earth. It had a large front pocket, almost like a pouch. Maya had always loved wearing it during her shifts when the corridors got cold. Moving carefully, she reached into the ventilation space and lifted out the first cub. It was lighter than she expected and very soft. She placed it gently into the hoodie pocket and reached for the second one. This one squeaked a little but settled down quickly. The third cub came last, and as soon as Maya pulled it free, all 3 cubs burrowed deep into the pocket, pressing against her stomach through the fabric. Maya put the hoodie back on and zipped it up halfway. The weight of the 3 cubs was noticeable but not uncomfortable. She could feel them moving slightly, adjusting their positions. Then, as the warmth from her body reached them, they began to settle down. The chirping stopped. She felt tiny bodies relax against her. She stood up and looked around the corridor. No cameras in this section. That was good. Maya started walking back toward the main security hub, trying to keep her movements smooth and steady. Inside the hoodie, the cubs had gone completely still. She thought they might have fallen asleep already. The walk back took 10 minutes. Maya's mind raced the entire time. What was she doing? Where would she keep them? How would she feed them? What would happen when someone found out? Every question made her more nervous, but she kept walking. She had made her choice. The security hub was a large room filled with monitors and control panels. Maya's desk sat in one corner, facing a wall of screens that showed different areas of the station. Her partner for the night shift, Officer Krell, sat at his own desk on the opposite side of the room. He was Centaurian with 4 arms and gray-blue skin. He barely looked up when Maya entered. "Quiet night," Krell said in his precise, measured voice. "Very quiet," Maya agreed. She sat down at her desk carefully, trying not to jostle the cubs. They had definitely fallen asleep. She could feel the soft rise and fall of their breathing against her stomach. It was strangely comforting. She pulled up her monitoring screens and began her usual checks. Everything on the station appeared normal. Ships docked at the correct ports. All life support systems functioning properly. No security alerts. Just another boring night shift on Terminus 7, except for the 3 illegal alien cubs currently dozing in her hoodie. Maya glanced down at her chest. One small paw had emerged from the pocket, resting against the fabric. She smiled despite her nervousness. They felt safe with her. That meant something. 2 hours passed. Maya managed to look professional and focused while her heart continued to race. She filed routine reports, answered 2 calls from crew members locked out of their quarters, and reset a malfunctioning door sensor on Deck 9. All normal activities, all while 3 Velkari cubs slept peacefully against her body. Krell stood up and stretched all 4 arms above his head. "I am going for my break," he announced. 20 minutes. "Sure thing," Maya said, not looking away from her screens. When Krell left the room, Maya finally allowed herself to relax slightly. She unzipped her hoodie a few inches and looked down. 3 small faces looked back at her, now wide awake. They blinked up at her with those enormous eyes. One of them made a soft chirping sound, but it was different now. Less desperate, almost content. "You guys are going to get me fired," Maya whispered to them. The cubs just stared at her. One of them yawned, showing a tiny pink mouth and even tinier teeth. Then it curled back into the pocket and closed its eyes again. Maya zipped the hoodie back up and returned to her work. She had no plan. She had no idea how she would manage this situation, but as she felt the warm weight of the sleeping cubs against her, she knew she had done the right thing. Sometimes the right thing was also the complicated thing. The monitors showed empty hallways. The station continued its endless rotation through space. And in the security hub, Maya Chen sat at her desk completing her shift while 3 forbidden lives dozed safely in her hoodie. Krell returned from his break exactly 20 minutes later. He always did. Centaurians were precise about time, about rules, about everything. He settled back into his chair and resumed monitoring his section of screens. Maya tried to focus on her own work, but she kept glancing down at her hoodie. The cubs were awake now, moving around inside the pocket. She could feel them shifting positions, occasionally poking each other. "Officer Chen, are you feeling well?" Krell asked without looking away from his monitors. Maya's heart jumped. "I'm fine." "Why do you ask?" "You have checked your uniform 17 times in the past hour. You also keep touching your stomach area. These are signs of digestive discomfort in humans, correct?" "Oh yeah, just a little stomach trouble. Nothing serious?" Maya forced herself to stop fidgeting. Inside the hoodie, one of the cubs was climbing over another one. She could feel tiny claws through her shirt. It tickled. Krell nodded slowly. His forearms continued working, typing reports and adjusting camera angles. "You should visit the medical bay if the discomfort continues." "I will, thanks." The next hour passed in tense silence. Maya completed her standard security tasks while trying to ignore the increasingly active cubs. They had been sleeping when she found them, exhausted and cold. Now that they were warm and felt safe, they wanted to play. She felt them tumbling over each other, heard the faintest chirping sounds that she desperately hoped Krell could not hear. At 0300 hours, the main security door slid open. Maya looked up and felt her blood turn cold. Ambassador Shetra entered the hub, followed by 2 Velkari assistants. The Velkari were tall, nearly 7 feet, with the same silver-gray fur as the cubs but shorter and more refined. Their movements were graceful and deliberate. Shetra's face was expressionless, but her dark eyes scanned the room carefully. "Good evening, Ambassador," Krell said, standing up. "How may we assist you?" Maya stood as well, one hand unconsciously moving to her hoodie. Inside, the cubs had gone completely still, as if sensing danger. "We are searching for missing genetic materials," Shetra said. Her voice was cold and formal. 3 unauthorized cubs were detected in the lower maintenance areas earlier today. They have not been recovered. We believe they may still be hiding in the station's service corridors. We have not received any reports of stray animals, Krell replied. He looked at Maya. Officer Chen completed the lower section patrol tonight. Did you observe anything unusual? Maya forced herself to meet Krell's eyes. She felt the cubs pressing against her stomach, completely motionless now. Her mouth was dry. Nothing unusual. All sections were clear. Shetra stepped closer. She was very tall, and Maya had to look up to meet her gaze. "You patrolled Section 7 Delta?" "Yes, ma'am." "At what time?" "Around 2100 hours." The ambassador studied her for a long moment. Maya kept her breathing steady. She had learned basic security training, including how to stay calm under pressure. But this was different. She was lying to a diplomat while literally hiding the evidence against her body. One of the cubs shifted slightly. Maya coughed to cover any sound it might make. The movement was small, but she saw Shetra's eyes flick down to her torso for just a second. "You appear to be overheated. Officer Chen, perhaps you should remove your outer garment." Maya's pulse hammered in her ears. "I run cold. The night shift corridors are chilly." "I see." Shetra's expression did not change, but something flickered in her eyes. Suspicion? Recognition? Maya could not tell. "If you observe any small animals during your patrols, you must report them immediately. The missing genetic materials are property of the Velkari government. Interfering with their recovery would constitute a serious diplomatic incident." "Understood, Ambassador." Shetra held her gaze for another long moment, then turned and left with her assistants. The door slid shut behind them. Maya remained standing, not daring to move. Inside her hoodie, she felt one of the cubs starting to tremble. Krell sat back down. "The Velkari have very strict population control laws," he said quietly. "I do not pretend to understand them, but they are not our concern. Each species governs itself according to its own customs." Maya slowly returned to her chair. Her legs felt weak. "What happens to the cubs if they're found?" "They're terminated. The Velkari do not permit unauthorized breeding. It maintains their social stability." Krell's tone was neutral, simply stating facts. From their perspective, it is logical. Too many individuals cause resource strain and social disorder. That seems cruel. Perhaps. But it is not our place to judge. We are a multi-species station. We must respect all cultures, even when we do not agree with them. Krell looked at her with his large dark eyes. "This is the foundation of galactic peace, Officer Chen. Non-interference in the internal affairs of other species." Maya nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She understood what Krell was saying. She had learned the same principles in her training. The galaxy was home to hundreds of different species, each with their own values and traditions. Humans were newcomers to this vast community. They had to learn to accept that other species did things differently. But sitting there with 3 tiny, warm lives pressed against her stomach, Maya found that acceptance very difficult. She pulled up her computer and began searching the station's database. She needed to understand exactly what she was dealing with. The search for Velkari reproductive law brought up pages of information. Maya read quickly, her face growing more troubled with each paragraph. The cubs were classified as excess genetic production. They had been born to a Velkari female who already had her approved quota of offspring. According to law, they should have been eliminated at birth. Somehow they had been hidden or escaped. The fact that they were alive at all was illegal. If the cubs were recovered, they would be destroyed within hours. No exceptions, no appeals. The law was absolute. Maya closed the files and stared at her monitors. The screens showed empty corridors, quiet docking bays, sleeping crew quarters. Everything looked peaceful. But she knew that somewhere on this station, Ambassador Shetra was searching, looking for 3 small lives that the Velkari considered nothing more than problems to be erased. Inside her hoodie, one of the cubs made the softest sound. Not quite a chirp, more like a tiny sigh. Its small body relaxed against her, trusting and warm. Maya made her decision for the second time that night. She had saved these cubs once. She would not let them be taken now. Somehow she would protect them, even if it meant breaking every rule. Even if it meant risking her career and causing a diplomatic incident. She was human. And humans, she was learning, had a very difficult time following rules that seemed wrong. The rest of the shift passed slowly. Krell worked quietly at his station. Maya completed her duties while the cubs dozed and occasionally stirred in her hoodie. Every time the door opened, her heart raced. But it was only regular station personnel. No more visits from Ambassador Shetra. When her shift finally ended at 800 hours, Maya stood and gathered her things. The cubs were sleeping again, full and content. She had no idea what they had eaten last or how she would feed them. She had no idea where she would hide them. She only knew that she had to try. "Officer Chen," Krell said as she headed for the door. Maya froze. one hand on her hoodie. Yes? Krell looked at her with an expression she could not read. I hope your stomach trouble improves. Thank you. I'm sure it will. She left the security hub and walked quickly through the corridors toward her quarters. Inside her hoodie, 3 small hearts beat steadily against her own. Maya had barely entered her quarters when her communicator buzzed. She pulled it out, still cradling the hoodie pocket where the cubs slept. The message was from David Torres, one of the human engineers who worked in the station's power distribution center. Heard you might need some help with a small problem. Meet me in the human commons at 0900? Maya stared at the message. How did David know? She had told no one. She typed back quickly. How did you hear about this? Word travels fast among humans on this station. We look out for each other, especially when one of us does something stupid and brave. Despite her exhaustion and fear, Maya smiled. She sent back a confirmation and looked down at the cubs. 2 were sleeping soundly, but the third had wriggled its way up and was poking its head out of the pocket. It looked around her small quarters with wide, curious eyes. You're going to cause me so much trouble, Maya whispered. The cub chirped softly and licked her finger with a tiny, rough tongue. She found some protein paste in her food storage and offered a small amount to the cubs. They ate eagerly, making happy chirping sounds. After they finished, Maya created a nest from her spare blankets in a drawer she had emptied. The cubs explored their new bed, tumbling over each other playfully. One was definitely more adventurous than the others, climbing to the top of the blanket pile. Another was more cautious, staying close to its siblings. The third seemed constantly hungry, squeaking hopefully every time Maya looked at it. At 0900 hours exactly, Maya entered the human commons. It was a small lounge area that the station's human population had claimed as their own space. About 15 people were there, more than Maya had ever seen gathered at once. She recognized most of them. Engineers, medical staff, maintenance workers, and a few administrative personnel. David Torres stood when she entered. He was a short, stocky man with kind eyes and graying hair. Maya, good to see you. How does everyone know? Maya asked quietly. A woman named Sarah Chen, no relation to Maya despite the shared last name, laughed softly. Krell told his supervisor that you were acting strange during your shift. His supervisor mentioned it to the Centaurian medical officer. The medical officer told Dr. Tanaka that a human might be having stomach problems. Dr. Tanaka knows that humans don't usually report stomach problems to security supervisors. She started asking questions. Dr. Yuki Tanaka stepped forward. She was the senior human medical officer on the station, a small woman with sharp eyes and a quick smile. I also heard that Ambassador Shetra was searching for missing Valkyrie cubs. And I know you patrolled the lower sections last night. The math was not difficult. So everyone knows, Maya said, feeling her face grow hot. Not everyone, David said. Just us, the humans. And we're all in agreement. We help you. Help me do what? I'm hiding 3 cubs that are legally supposed to be dead. The Valkyrie want them back. I've already committed a serious violation of station protocol. A young man named Marcus spoke up from the back. You did the right thing. Those are babies. Living, thinking babies. What the Valkyrie do to them is wrong. It's their culture, Maya said, echoing Krell's words. We're supposed to respect that. I respect their right to govern themselves, Dr. Tanaka said firmly. I do not respect their right to kill children. There is a difference. Several people nodded in agreement. Maya looked around the room at her fellow humans. They were all watching her with expressions of determination and support. She felt something tight in her chest begin to loosen. The cubs are in my quarters right now, Maya said. I don't know how to take care of them. I don't know how to keep them hidden, and I definitely don't know what to do long term. We'll figure it out, Sarah said. That's what humans do. We figure things out. Over the next hour, the group developed a plan. Dr. Tanaka would research Valkyrie cub nutrition and health needs. David and his engineering team would create a hidden space in the maintenance areas where the cubs could stay, during times when Maya's quarters might be inspected. Sarah, who worked in station administration, would start looking for legal loopholes that might protect the cubs. What we really need, Dr. Tanaka said thoughtfully, is to establish the cubs as something other than Valkyrie property. If we could classify them as research subjects or protected individuals, we might have a case. Can we do that? Maya asked. Possibly. Human law has provisions for protecting sentient beings from harm, regardless of species. The problem is getting the station authorities to recognize those protections here. Marcus, who worked in the communications department, raised his hand. What if we reach out to other humans on nearby stations? If we can show that this is part of a larger pattern of Velkari cub abandonment, maybe we can push for a review of their policies. That would take time, Sarah pointed out, and it would definitely alert the authorities to what we're doing. We need to keep the cubs hidden first, David said. Make sure they're safe. Then we can work on the legal aspects. Maya felt overwhelmed, but also strangely hopeful. She had expected to face this problem alone. Instead, she had an entire team of helpers. It was very human, she realized. When one person did something risky for a good reason, other humans immediately joined in to support them. They did not ask for permission. They did not wait for approval. They just helped. The meeting ended with assignments given and plans made. Maya returned to her quarters to find all 3 cubs awake and wrestling with her pillow. They had pulled it off her bunk and were climbing all over it, chirping and play fighting. When Maya entered, they stopped and looked at her, then rushed over on their small legs, climbing up her pants and trying to get back into her hoodie pocket. "You guys are trouble," Maya said, but she was smiling. She scooped them up and let them burrow into the pocket where they felt safe. 2 days passed. Maya worked her shifts with the cubs hidden in her hoodie or left in the secret nest that David's team had built in a maintenance closet. Dr. Tanaka provided proper food and supplements. The cubs grew stronger and more active. They had stopped being frightened little creatures and had become playful, curious bundles of energy. But then the news spread. Someone had seen something, or heard something, or maybe the Velkari had their own intelligence sources. Whatever the reason, the word got out. A human security officer was hiding the missing cubs. Commander Thex, Maya's supervisor, called her to his office on the 3rd day. He was insectoid with compound eyes and clicking mandibles. His species, the Thexler, produced thousands of offspring at once, with most dying before adulthood. The concept of caring for individual young was foreign to him. Maya stood before his desk, the cubs in her hoodie. She had thought about leaving them behind, but somehow that felt like giving up. If this was the end, she would face it with them. "Officer Chen," Commander Thex said in his clicking, buzzing voice, "there are reports that you have taken possession of 3 Velkari cubs that are classified as illegal genetic materials. Is this accurate?" Maya met his compound eyes. "Yes, sir. You understand this is a serious violation of station protocol and potentially a diplomatic incident?" "Yes, sir. You also understand that the cubs are property of the Velkari government and must be returned to them for proper disposal." Maya felt the cubs shift in her hoodie. One small head poked out, looking around with curious eyes. It saw Commander Thex and tilted its head, making a soft, questioning chirp. Commander Thex stopped speaking. His antennae twitched. He leaned forward slightly, his compound eyes focusing on the small face peeking from Maya's pocket. The cub chirped again, then climbed further out. Before Maya could stop it, the small creature was sitting on the edge of the hoodie pocket, looking directly at the commander. Its silver fur caught the light. Its huge eyes blinked slowly. For a long moment no one moved. Maya held her breath. The cub made a sound, softer now, almost like a coo. It was the sound of a baby that felt safe and content. Commander Thex's mandibles clicked slowly. "I do not understand," he said quietly. "My species produces 4,000 offspring at a time. Perhaps 200 survive to adulthood. This is natural. This is how life works. Yet you risk your career for 3 small creatures that are not even your own species." "They're children," Maya said simply. "They're alive and aware, and they deserve a chance. The Velkari do not see them that way. The Velkari are wrong." The words hung in the air. Maya had just contradicted the fundamental principle of galactic cooperation, non-interference, respect for all cultures. She had declared that her own moral code was more important than diplomatic relations. Commander Thex was silent for a long time. The cub had climbed back into Maya's hoodie, satisfied with its exploration. Finally, the commander spoke. "The other humans know about this, yes?" "Yes, sir." "And they support your actions?" "They do." Another long pause. Then Commander Thex made a sound that might have been a sigh. "Humans are going to be such a problem for this galaxy." The emergency tribunal was convened in the station's main council chamber 3 days after Maya's meeting with Commander Thex. The room was large and circular, with seats arranged in tiers around a central speaking platform. Representatives from 24 species filled the chamber. The air hummed with translated conversations in languages Maya could not identify. Maya stood on the central platform, wearing her formal security uniform. The cubs were with her naturally. They refused to leave her presence for more than a few minutes now. They had bonded to her completely, following her around her quarters, sleeping against her at night and making distressed sounds whenever she left the room. So she had brought them to the tribunal in her hoodie, and no one had objected. Yet Ambassador Shetra sat in the Velkari section, flanked by 3 legal advisors. Her face showed no emotion as she watched Maya. Other ambassadors and officials filled their designated areas. Commander. Thex represented the station's security interests. Dr. Tanaka sat in the human observation section, with a dozen other humans who had come to support Maya. The tribunal was overseen by Magistrate Velkoth, a crystalline being whose body refracted light in complex patterns. When Velkoth spoke, their voice came from a translation device that made it sound neutral and calm. We are gathered to address the matter of Officer Maya Chen and 3 Velkari cubs currently in her possession. Ambassador Shetra, please present your case. Shetra stood gracefully. The facts are simple. 3 cubs were born in violation of Velkari population control laws. They are classified as illegal genetic materials and must be eliminated according to our legal code. Officer Chen discovered these cubs and chose to hide them rather than report them. She has committed theft of Velkari property and interference in our internal governance. We demand the cubs be returned immediately and that Officer Chen face appropriate punishment for her crimes. Shetra sat down. Several species in the chamber made sounds of agreement. The Centaurians nodded their large heads. The hive mind chorus pulsed in unison, their collective opinion clear. Magistrate Velkoth turned their faceted body toward Maya. Officer Chen, how do you respond? Maya had practiced this moment with Dr. Tanaka and the other humans. They had written speeches and prepared arguments. But standing there with the weight of the cubs in her hoodie and the stares of dozens of alien species upon her, Maya forgot all of it. She spoke from her heart instead. I found 3 babies dying in a cold corridor, Maya said. They were shivering and scared and alone. I knew the rules. I knew the laws. But I also knew that if I followed those rules, 3 living, thinking beings would die for the crime of being born. I couldn't do it. I couldn't walk away, so I saved them. The Velkari have the right to govern their own population, a Centaurian representative said. You had no authority to interfere. I had the authority that every thinking being has, Maya replied. The authority to protect those who cannot protect themselves. These cubs are not property. They are individuals. They have thoughts and feelings and the capacity to grow and learn. Killing them is wrong no matter what the law says. Your morality is not universal. The hive mind chorus spoke in their unified voice. What seems cruel to you is logical to the Velkari. They maintain population balance to ensure the survival of their entire species. Your individual sentiment endangers their collective good. Does it? Maya looked at Ambassador Shetra. How many cubs are abandoned each year? How many lives are ended before they begin? Shetra's expression remained neutral. Approximately 400 cubs per year are eliminated as excess population. This rate has remained stable for centuries. It is a necessary function of our society. A murmur went through the chamber. 400 seemed like a large number to many species, though to others like the hive mind it was barely significant. Maya felt the cubs moving in her hoodie. They were getting restless. Before she could stop them, all 3 climbed out of the pocket and dropped to the floor of the platform. They looked around at the massive chamber and the strange beings watching them, but they did not seem afraid. Instead, they started exploring. The adventurous cub walked right to the edge of the platform, looking down at the drop below with curious eyes. The cautious one stayed close to Maya's feet, occasionally glancing up at her for reassurance. The hungry one found a small piece of something on the floor and tried to eat it before Maya gently redirected it. Stop the cubs from moving, Shetra said sharply, but Maya did not stop them. She watched as the 3 small creatures toddled around the platform, investigating their new environment. They were just being cubs, curious and playful and alive. The chamber had gone quiet. Dozens of beings watched the cubs explore. The adventurous one had discovered the steps leading down from the platform and was attempting to navigate them, one small paw at a time. It was not very coordinated and kept sliding backward, but it tried again with determined chirps. Something unexpected happened. A saurian representative, a large reptilian being with green scales, made a sound. It took Maya a moment to recognize it as laughter. "The small one has courage," the saurian said, his voice deep and rumbling. "It attempts a task beyond its ability but does not surrender." Other beings shifted in their seats. Some leaned forward to see better. The cautious cub had ventured away from Maya and was now investigating Magistrate Velkoth's crystalline structure with fascinated chirps. It reached out a tiny paw to touch the refracted light patterns. Velkoth, who had remained perfectly still and neutral throughout the proceedings, spoke quietly. "The cubs demonstrate awareness and personality. They show individual behavioral patterns and learning capability. These are markers of developing consciousness." "They are infants," the Centaurian representative said. "All infants show such behaviors. It does not change their legal status, does it not?" The Saurian representative stood. He was massive, easily 9 feet tall. "My people have a history with humanity that few here know. 60 years ago, when my species first made contact with Earth, we were suffering from a terrible plague. Our colony ships were dying. We had no cure and no hope. The humans we encountered could have ignored us. We were not allies. We had nothing to offer them. But they did not ignore us. They risked their own lives to develop a treatment. They saved thousands of my people, including my own egg clutch. They did this because they saw beings in need and chose to help, regardless of logic or benefit." The Saurian gestured toward Maya with one clawed hand. "This human acts from the same instinct. She sees beings that deserve life and she protects them. This is not sentiment. This is not foolishness. This is a philosophy that says every individual life has value. Perhaps it is a philosophy the rest of us should consider." Several representatives began speaking at once, the chamber filled with debates in multiple languages. Some agreed with the Saurian. Others argued for strict non-interference. The hive mind insisted that individual lives were meaningless compared to collective stability. Through it all, the 3 cubs continued their exploration. The adventurous one had finally made it down the steps and was proudly chirping at its accomplishment. The cautious one had climbed onto Magistrate Velkoth's platform and was curled up against the crystalline base, apparently deciding it was a comfortable spot. The hungry one had found its way to the human observation section, where Dr. Tanaka had picked it up and was feeding it a nutrient bar. Ambassador Shetra stood abruptly. "This is irrelevant. The cubs are Velkari property. They must be returned. Are they property?" A new voice spoke. It came from the Velkari section, but not from Shetra. One of her legal advisors, a younger Velkari female, had stood. "Magistrate, may I speak?" Velkoth paused. "You may." The young Velkari stepped forward. Her voice was quiet but clear. "My name is Kethra. I am a junior legal advisor to Ambassador Shetra. I also had a sister once. She was the 4th cub in our family unit. My parents were only authorized for 3. My sister was taken when she was 10 days old. I never saw her again." The chamber went completely silent. Shetra remained perfectly still, her face unreadable. Kethra continued. "I have researched human legal concepts as part of my duties. They have a principle called sapient rights. It states that any being capable of thought, emotion, and self-awareness deserves protection from harm. These cubs are capable of all 3. By human law, they are protected individuals, not property. Human law does not govern this station," the Centaurian representative said. "But perhaps it should in cases like this," Kethra replied. "We claim to be an advanced galactic community. We claim to value peace and cooperation. Yet we allow the systematic elimination of thinking beings simply because their birth was inconvenient. Officer Chen showed us that there is another way, a way that honors life rather than discarding it." Ambassador Shetra finally spoke, her voice tight. "Advisor Kethra, you are dismissed from these proceedings." But Kethra did not sit down. She looked directly at Shetra. "With respect, Ambassador, I will not be silent about this anymore. None of us should be." The chamber erupted in discussion once again. Maya stood on the platform, watching it all unfold. The adventurous cub had made its way back to her and was climbing up her leg, trying to get back to the safety of the hoodie pocket. She picked it up gently and it immediately burrowed against her, content and trusting. Magistrate Velkoth raised. The 3 hours felt like 3 days. Maya waited in a small room adjacent to the council chamber with Dr. Tanaka and several other humans. The cubs played on the floor, chasing each other and tumbling over cushions that someone had brought for them. They seemed completely unaware of the debate that would determine their fate. "Whatever happens," Dr. Tanaka said quietly, "you did the right thing." Maya nodded, watching the cubs play. The adventurous one was trying to climb the wall. The cautious one was grooming itself carefully. The hungry one was begging for more food despite having eaten 20 minutes ago. "I just wanted to save them," Maya said. "I didn't mean to start all this." "Sometimes the biggest changes start with the smallest actions," Dr. Tanaka replied. "One person decides to do something different. Others see it and are inspired. Soon the whole system shifts. You may have done more than save 3 cubs, Maya. You may have started a conversation this galaxy needs to have." When they returned to the council chamber, the atmosphere had changed. The seats were filled again, but there was less tension now, more curiosity. The various species watched Maya and the cubs with interest rather than judgment. Magistrate Velkoth took their position at the center. Their crystalline body refracted the chamber lights into rainbow patterns across the walls. "This tribunal has reached a decision," Velkoth announced. "However, it is not a simple decision and it requires explanation." The chamber was completely silent. Officer Chen violated station protocol by failing to report the cubs. She interfered with Velkari internal governance. By the strict interpretation of our laws, she should face punishment and the cubs should be returned to Velkari authority. Maya felt her heart sink. The cubs, sensing her distress, pressed closer against her legs. "However," Velkoth continued, "this case has revealed something important. Our current legal framework was designed to respect cultural differences among species, but it did not account for situations where cultural practices conflict with emerging principles of individual rights. The cubs demonstrate consciousness and awareness. They are not objects. They are thinking beings." A murmur went through the chamber. Several species made sounds of agreement. "Therefore, this tribunal establishes a new legal precedent. We will call it the Humanitarian Exception Clause. When the internal practices of a member species result in direct harm to demonstrably conscious individuals, other species may intervene to protect those individuals. This intervention must be justified before a tribunal such as this one, and the burden of proof lies with the intervening party." Velkoth turned their faceted body toward Maya. "Officer Chen, you have met that burden. The cubs will not be returned to Valkyrie authority. Instead, they are placed under human stewardship protocols as protected individuals. You will serve as their legal guardian." Maya could barely breathe. She looked down at the 3 cubs. They looked back at her with their huge eyes, completely trusting. She had done it. They were safe. "However," Velkoth said, and Maya's attention snapped back, "you did violate station protocol. You will receive a formal reprimand. Additionally, you are reassigned from standard security duties. Your new position will be liaison for the newly created Interspecies Welfare Initiative. Your role will be to identify and address similar situations across the station and, eventually, across the galaxy." The chamber erupted. Some species protested loudly. The Centaurians were clicking their mandibles in disapproval. The hive mind pulsed with confusion, but others made sounds of approval. The Saurians roared their support. Several other species added their agreement. Ambassador Shetra stood slowly. Every eye turned to her. She looked at Maya for a long moment, then at the cubs. Her expression was difficult to read. "The Velkari government will file a formal protest against this decision," she said. "We maintain that this sets a dangerous precedent that undermines species sovereignty." Then she did something unexpected. She walked down from the Velkari section and approached the platform where Maya stood. The cubs saw her coming, and the cautious one hid behind Maya's leg, but the adventurous one stepped forward, tilting its head curiously. Shetra knelt down, bringing herself to the cub's level. She looked at it closely, studying its features. The cub chirped softly. For just a moment, something flickered across Shetra's face. Pain, loss, regret. She reached out one long finger and gently touched the cub's head. It leaned into the touch, making a contented sound. "I had a cub once," Shetra said quietly, so only Maya could hear. "She was excess population. I could not save her. The law was absolute. I watched them take her away and I did nothing." Maya did not know what to say. She stood frozen as Shetra straightened up. "You did what I could not. the ambassador said, still speaking softly. You broke the rules and faced the consequences because you believed it was right. Perhaps that is courage, or perhaps it is foolishness. I am not certain which. I'm not certain either, Maya admitted. Shetra looked at her with those dark, intelligent eyes. The Velkari government will protest this decision, but I will not personally oppose your actions. My protest will be formal, not enthusiastic. Do you understand? Maya nodded slowly. She understood. Shetra had to maintain her diplomatic position, but personally she supported what Maya had done. The ambassador turned and walked back to her section. The tribunal ended shortly after, with various species filing out while making their opinions known. The humans surrounded Maya, congratulating her and playing with the cubs. Commander Thex approached, his mandibles clicking in what might have been amusement. You are now the most troublesome officer I've ever supervised, he said, and also possibly the most important. Try not to start any wars with your new position. I'll do my best, sir. 6 months passed. The cubs grew quickly as Velkari young did. They were now the size of medium dogs with longer legs and more refined features. They had developed distinct personalities. The adventurous one, whom Maya had named Scout, was always exploring and getting into places she should not be. The cautious one, called Whisper, was gentle and thoughtful, often sitting quietly and observing before acting. The hungry one, named Munch, had not lost his appetite and was constantly begging for food from anyone who would provide it. Maya's new office was in a section of the station that had been converted for the Interspecies Welfare Initiative. It was a large space with multiple rooms. One room served as her office. Another was set up as a nursery with nests and play equipment for various species. A third room contained medical equipment and food storage. The cubs spent most of their time in the nursery, but they had a special nest in Maya's office where they could sleep near her. They still preferred to be close to her when possible, though they were becoming more independent each day. Maya's work had expanded far beyond what she had imagined. In 6 months, she had handled 43 cases of abandoned or endangered young from 12 different species. Each case was different. Each required careful navigation of cultural sensitivities and legal frameworks. But the humanitarian exception clause that the tribunal had established gave her the authority to act when necessary. Other humans had joined the initiative. Dr. Tanaka was the medical director. David Torres designed safe habitats. Sarah Chen handled the legal aspects. Marcus managed communications with other stations. The team had grown to 20 humans, all working to protect individuals who fell through the cracks of their own society's laws. The initiative was not universally popular. Many species viewed it as human interference in matters that did not concern them, but slowly, gradually, perspectives were beginning to shift. Other species started asking questions about their own practices. Some began to reform their laws. Change was happening, one small step at a time. Maya sat at her desk reviewing a new case that had been reported from a nearby station. A species called the Vril had abandoned a disabled infant in a recycling facility. The Vril considered physical imperfection to be shameful. Maya was already preparing the paperwork to request custody. The door to her office opened and Krell entered. The Centaurian had requested a transfer to work with the initiative 3 months ago. He still believed in protocols and procedures, but he had decided that some protocols needed to change. Officer Chen, he said in his precise way, we have a situation in the lower docks. A ship captain is attempting to abandon 5 young of an unidentified species. Security has detained him, but we need someone to care for the young immediately. Maya stood up. What do they need? Unknown. They appear mammalian, but our scans cannot identify their species. They are very small and are not responding to standard care attempts. I'm on my way. Maya grabbed her emergency kit and headed for the door. Behind her, Scout, Whisper, and Munch lifted their heads from their nest. Stay here, Maya told them. I'll be back soon. Scout chirped in protest, but Munch was already settling back down for another nap. Whisper watched Maya leave with patient eyes, content to wait. As Maya hurried through the corridors toward the lower docks, she passed the usual traffic of station life. Aliens of every description going about their business. But now, occasionally, she saw something new. A Velkari walking with a young cub openly at their side. A Centaurian helping a small being that appeared to be a different species